Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. There are 4 categories of human beings, 4 personality types. It says emotional, intellectual, active, indolent. The whole classification is based on the fundamental principle we have studied earlier. There are 3 transactions happening in life. We saw that earlier. You receive the stimulus reacts within you, and depending upon the reaction inside, you respond back to the world. These are the 3 transactions of life. In this, we did see that if you have to work, essentially you have to work with reference to your reactions. Don't pay much attention to the receipt, or you don't have to worry much about reaction. First, pay attention to your reactions inside. Then the other 2 can be worked out, receipts and responses. So all your actions, we found that is driven either by the mind or by the intellect. That's where we studied. These are all basics we studied in introduction. From there, we are taking the lead and studying more in detail now. And that's how we started the entire analysis. We studied the human composition, and then we moved on to self-analysis, then the states of consciousness, and now we are in this practices. So remember the sequence. So body by itself cannot act. That body to drive into activity has to be propelled, motivated, driven either by the mind or by the intellect, either by your emotions or by your thinking, rational. So either emotions drives or thinking drives. This is the basic concept. Keep it in the background. And now we are discussing in terms of this 4 classifications of people. This is based on this idea only. The one who is predominantly emotional in nature. It's just, this the scriptural studies, holds a mirror to ourselves. That's about it. So that you can decipher which category you belong to. And then accordingly, you can take up that practice. So of that spiritual discipline. So this is the idea. Why we have to study all this is only for that purpose. So an emotional person takes to the path of bhakti. The intellectual person takes to the path of jnanam. Active person takes to the path of karma. The indolent takes to the path of hatha. So 4 types. Then he says, you are not 100% emotional, 100% intellectual, active, or indolent. You are a combination. So when we say a person is emotional, what we mean is he is predominantly emotional. Then you have predominantly intellectual. Before we go into the analysis of what bhakti means, what jnanam means, what karma means, and all those things, first you have to understand the practitioner. Practices we can worry later. That's not the essential one to pay attention to. The essential thing is to know about the practitioner, because it is the practitioner who is breathing life into the practices. So if the practitioner is not doing the appropriate practices, then it will not work. When it doesn't work, the people get annoyed. That's a lot of people. That's what happens to most of us. Most of us have started the spiritual practices without having a clue of any one of these things. No one pays attention to any one of these ideas. Straight away, you have started the practices. Whatever the practices people do, whether they do it some rituals, or they go to the pilgrimages, or they go to study, or they do some exercises, they do this, whatever we do in the name of spiritual, we have plunged into the spiritual practices without understanding the practitioner's nature. That's why first he analyzes the practitioner. He is classified into 4. So stay more in this first. Pay more attention to it. Read this portion carefully, slowly, and try to understand who is an emotional person, and then how practice of bhakti, devotion, helps that person to evolve. And already we have discussed in terms of what is the mark of evolution or the purpose of evolution. What are they supposed to do in spiritual? Spiritual practices were done with one point agenda: reduction of desires. That's the agenda of the spiritual practices. If you are not having that as a goal, doesn't matter what you do, it's not spiritual. So anything you do, it should be done with the idea of reduction of desires. Only then it qualifies to be a spiritual effort, spiritual action. Otherwise, it's not a spiritual action. Then what is it, Sarla? I don't know. I have no idea about that. Then what is it? You have to ask those people only. Right? So that we has already established. What is the agenda of spiritual? What is the purpose? What's the goal? Now, he starts analyzing what is this personality types. Who is an emotional person? The emotional person who is intellectual, who is physical, being active, etc. We see people come, for the class. First time they come for the lecture. The class they come, they attend the lectures. I remember in Ananda, is one of those, the person, guest, were inquiring about me, it seems. And they were asking, she wanted to discuss with you. What is that? What is the secret of clear skin? You are asking me, very interesting, Some of them come to the class, say, how old are you? I ask. Either they ask or they wonder. That's a different thing. But the first thought comes to is what? Just how old he must be. And then, of course, I don't tell my age. Right? It was so interesting. They were asking me at that time, So I said, this is, and she was really shocked actually. Sir, don't joke. I said, I'm not joking. You are having my passport copy with you people. No, check it out. I said, that reception, they take when you go there. They take. I said, my passport copy is there with you people. Check it out. No, I said, no, it can't be. Why? Focus is where? On this. And then there are other people come for the lectures. Other time, another group of people, another set. Set is, see, you scold, but why do you have to frown and speak? Speak with smiling, scold smilingly. I said, how can you scold someone smiling? When you are angry, how do you scold? This is what people ask. Why do you have to scold with a frown? Softly scold, Why are you shouting at top of your voice? Say, that is what you are supposed to do. You see, this is another type. What is this type, sir? This emotional type, second category. Then there is a third category of people. What is that? They come, they say what? Their focus is where? How ideas gets built. Beautifully you build that idea. Where to expand, where to contract, where to go in details. So methodic. Or a person can say, you just go on talking. End of the talk, there is nothing take home value we have. It's a good entertainment. There is no material. Or you are talking so commonsensical things. We don't need you for this. There's no necessity for a person to be coming and sitting for a waste of time. There's no flow. There is no building of ideas. Thoughts are thrown at random. Unnecessarily, you are giving too many examples. All these things means what? He is a intellectual type. They can give any comment. I'm not talking about only positive. You can give negative comments also. You see, a person can look for physical, a person can be looking emotional, a person can be looking intellectual. Now, each type varies. Now, to the emotional person, what is the nature of it? Pay more attention to that. Similarly, pay attention to what is an intellectual person. An intellectual person means he is rational throughout. Wherever he goes, every transaction, he will be so rational. If you want to know rational, you got to watch this, show. Shelton. In Netflix, there is this fellow, this character comes. That, what is that? Theory. Some theory, that thing comes. That show. In that, the one character will come. Listen to his talk. You need some science background. Otherwise, you can't understand what the big discussion goes on. There. It's fascinating to see those people, how everything he will go by the literal meaning of what a person says. That's about it. Absolutely no emotions, nothing. Right through, He is, it is logic only for him. Rational, thinking, analysis. That's all he'll go. Such a person is so useful. Remember, that's the beauty. A person like that would be useful to you. But we don't get inspired to be like that. You can't get inspiration to be like him because they lack totally emotions. They look like robots. You see, a robot. You can, but they are very useful fellows because they can explain to you, they can help you, they can analyze for you, they can do the job for you. So much they can do. All that is useful. They are useful personalities, but not personalities where you would like to get inspired. That's an intellectual person. The intellectual. Emotional is the one who sees everything with always, the brim actually, those people. I've seen, one lady, she used to come to the class. She would come and sit in the class. I just have to start. I've not yet actually started explaining anything, nothing. Just have to say things. That's all. She'll start crying. I remember this lecture, which happened in here a long time back. I took this lecture on Sundaragandam, the portion from Ramayana. One day, I said, don't ask me to do the full, not possible for you people, I have to teach, that means I have to do the whole, too much. So I did that. And there are about 40 and odd people there sitting. And I started explaining Rama. What was the condition of Rama when Hanuman came back and reported to Rama that Sita is alive. She's there. And the description, I started describing. Suddenly I saw about 70% of the class was in tears, crying. After that I stopped. I said, I'm not going to teach anymore. It's so beautiful to see one side of it, to with people. And it is so easy to do with few people. And in that lecture, there are people who are sitting just staring at me. There are people who keep sitting there and keep looking. And they can't even understand what is going on. This is another category. That's called indolent category. They don't even react. They don't react, they don't respond, nothing. It's just staring. That is the tamas. Fourth category of fellows. Indolent. This emotional category is, eyes will be always moist. Like you go to, this is what the advantage of, being with the master. You live, he would say, look at that. This person will come, now. That's all. You just see them. Distinct character, at the brim actually. I get so emotional. Just have to say, something you just have to say. That's all. They'll start crying. Tears will be flowing, Emotional category. To those people, what is the method? They say, you pour that emotion on a chosen deity. Some devata, some god, some idol. You see. So, by directing, channelizing all their emotions and pouring it on that deity, in that process, they don't have any time or energy left out in them to direct it towards the world. They are so satiated in that relationship with the deity is enough into themselves. They don't need any other relationships. Like Mirabai. She is so saturated, she is so satiated with the relationship with Krishna. She did not bother about her parents, her subjects, her servants, her husband, even her guru also she didn't pay attention to. At the Kula Guru and all these, sadhus and swamis, all these people come and, she didn't pay any attention to all this. Every one of them, she said, secondary. Everything gets displaced by sheer pouring of that emotion on that particular chosen. Generally, we say it's a deity. It could be a person also. It is much riskier when it comes to a person. You see, it will become attachment. That's why we take a deity. That's why it becomes a god. So why? Because this pouring of that emotion is so natural for them. They are so open. They are so willing. They have that at ease they can surrender. Their ability to surrender is so easy, automatic. They just have to see, they surrender. That's all. It's just a question of seeing. They meet the deity, surrender happens. That's why they say, love at first sight. They say, emotional. Emotional type of people love at first sight. You don't have to go on dating. Not necessary. That means what? It's a different category. Okay, what it is now we'll see later. But first thing is, it's not emotional category. Emotional category point is what, sir? Love at first sight. They just have to see. That's about it. Essentially, their strength is what? The strength of an emotional person is his ability to surrender. That's all. Intellectual person la surrender mudiyadhu. It's difficult for an intellectual person to surrender. To surrender, it's so easy for him. It's so natural. Just have to seize that. It's not only always crying, remember. It's not, don't take it as only crying type, please. You see, laughing also possible for them. You see, they laugh also. Before a person can crack a joke, you start laughing. That's emotional type. You see, the joke is yet to start. And there are people, even after the joke is over, they keep looking at you. You have to tell them, it's over. That's why, cracking jokes is very risky, It's such a risk it is. Making people laugh is such a risk. Because for a tragedy, second time you watch, you feel the pain. But for a comedy, second time you see, you'll never get that feel. Second time you get a comedy, it's not a comedy anymore, actually. First time only it is comedy. Second time is not a comedy. It's amazing to see how, there are people, before they can laugh. They laugh. Yeah. But what is so interesting is they can laugh only if the joke is cracked by that person. It's not that any joke they laugh. That's not their point. Remember, emotional type, they can laugh like, I can love only that particular. That's why, emotional people, devotion is given. They can't love everyone. That is not possible. That same inspiration they will not get. Mirabai can connect only to Krishna. Even if Rama passes by, she will say, she will move away from him. He will not go. She will not run towards Rama and hug him. He will move away. Shiva comes means she will not even recognize. You see, she can recognize only Krishna. That is how they gain that strength to get into that single pointedness. That achieving that single pointedness is so comfortable for people who are emotional in nature, predominantly emotional. Remember, that predominantly emotional type can take that spiritual discipline, which he gives here, and then he grows using that. That's why you ask a person, why are you loving? He can't give an explanation. He will keep looking at you. How can you not love? Majnu had a tremendous love towards Laila. And his love got such extreme maddening. He went mad in love. His father couldn't take it. First he resisted father. A point came where he became such a mad fellow in love of Laila. He was lying in the streets. A prince lying in the streets is too much for the king to take. So he goes and asks him, okay, don't insult me like this. Come home. To which the Persian poetry says, Ram Tirtha explains this so beautifully. Says, Majnu looked at his father and asked him a very pertinent question. Home? What is home? He couldn't understand. This is street you are lying. We call, who will be talking like that? Only an intoxicated person can be behaving like that. A drunkard, who we would have seen, is a drunkard like that, lying in the street, and he says, this is my home. A drunkard will behave like that. But he's not drunkard. But he's intoxicated. What is that he was intoxicated with? Intoxicated with the love for Laila. Everything became oblivious to him. He couldn't understand anything. So finally the father has to agree. Chalte, okay, come. Tomorrow, bring your Laila to the palace. And Laila was brought. And the father said, send her back. Okay, go, he said. He couldn't even have a conversation with her because she was looking so ugly. The father said, hey, okay, you are not loving another royalty, you are loving some ordinary citizen. It's okay. But can't you find one who is beautiful at least? If not beautiful, at least lookable. Such a thing as this. You are in love. And Majnu says, Father, look her through my eyes. Such maddening one. His love for her. Beautiful story. And Ram Tirtha doesn't stop there. He continues the story. That's the beauty. Yes. He says, one boy who heard the story of Majnu, and he got so inspired by that story of Majnu, and he searched and caught hold of the picture of Laila, and he started loving that Laila. And Majnu got to know this. He went to his house, dragged that fellow out, and snatched that picture away from him and tore that to pieces. He said, "You find your Laila. Don't start loving my Laila." And this is what we are all doing. What are we doing, sir? Mirabai got inspired by Krishna. Correct. What are we doing? Taking that same picture. Chaitanya got inspired by Krishna. Correct. Surdas got inspired by Krishna. Correct. But his Krishna is not your Krishna. You have to find your Krishna to pour your emotions. Our thing is what? Imitating. Very good imitators here. In that process, we believe I am developing. It's nothing to do with Laila. It's to do with love, actually. That love that Majnu had is what you are supposed to get, not the Laila picture. What is the picture of Laila? Nobody knows. Nobody has a picture of Laila. No one knows how beautiful she is, how ugly. The inscriptions that we have from the poets and things we find is she is not such a beautiful lady. Like Cleopatra. Who has a picture of Cleopatra? Nobody has. From the descriptions we say she must be just influence. You see, same way. Through these things, we inferred she is not a beautiful one. But we don't have to worry about how Laila looked. What is important is to understand that love that Majnu experienced. Can you experience that much of love? That is an emotional person. Emotional person can get into. That's why you ask him, why are you loving? Why do you like this person so much? You can't give an explanation for love. You can't give a logical reasoning for love. That's impossible. That's what emotional person is. That emotional person is naturally suited for the path of devotion. Predominantly, remember that. Then he says there is another category of people. The other category, he says, is predominantly intellectual, rational. What is a predominantly intellectual person? For him, everything is logic. Right? He will live his life with clear calculations. Now, in our terms today, we have started using the word intellectual person means he's a cunning fellow. Now, thinking is equated to cunningness today. Now, that is your misunderstanding, remember. That is not an intellectual person. Now, who is an intellectual person? That's the catch. Who is thinking? Are you really thinking? That's what we ask the basic question. Now, just because you are getting thoughts doesn't mean you are thinking, please. You see, flow of thoughts is not equivalent to thinking. It just requires some training. Once you get a particular training, thoughts will flow in that. Now, when it comes to stock market, no thoughts will flow in my mind. I will never get any thought. No thoughts will come. But to a person who is a stock analyst, stockbroker, for him, all that you have to do is what? Just give him a mic and let few people sit like you are all sitting now and ask him to talk. He will also talk on stock market for 1 hour. I cannot talk on stock market for 1 hour. He can talk for stock market for 1 hour. What's the difference between? There's no difference. Same thing. Why? I have been studying Vedanta for the last 25 years. Therefore, thoughts pertaining to Vedanta flows. I just have to start. So, start, blah, 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 will come. And then someone has to come and tell me, sir, time. And we'll say, okay, we'll meet next class. There's no problem at all. See, this doesn't define a person to be an intellectual place. For another person, it will be coming on music. Another person, it will come on sports. Another person will come on this. Thoughts flowing is not thinking. Intellectual person, rational. He is rational with reference to every transactions of life. He deciphers. He dissects with a clear reference point. What makes a person, what makes you is he keeps on asking questions. He will question everything. He will never take things for granted. He will not assume and live. He would not assume. He would question. He will not take things for granted. So, an intellectual person means who is predominantly driven by inquiry. He questions. He goes on asking question. Now, such a person is most suited for the pursuit of Jnana Yoga. Because Jnana Yoga is a process of inquiry, questioning. Not casual questions, please. It is a consistent inquiry into not what I should do or what I should not do. Not that. Remember. Inquiry into the very thinking, the very thought, and the thinker. Now, changing that direction is what Jnana Yoga does. But the momentum is already there in him. Momentum for emotional person is there already in him. He is moving in the direction of emotion. Momentum is there. Similarly, for an intellectual person, the momentum is already there in terms of what? Thinking. So Jnana Yoga does what? It just gives that momentum a direction. Bhakti Yoga gives a direction to that momentum. That's about it. The spiritual disciplines are nothing but they cannot generate momentum. Remember, that's not possible. The momentum should be there in you, and it can be disciplined, it can be directed by the practice of these yogas. So he is already a thinking type. He questions, he reasons, he is rational. That rational thinking personality is given a direction to his thinking. Right now, the direction to his thinking is what? Inquiry into the world. The practice of Jnana Yoga shifts the focus from inquiry into the world to the thinking and to the thinker. Have you ever thought on your thinking pattern? See, you think so many thoughts, right? You think on so many things. Stock analysis, you do. Where is the focus? Focus is on the stocks. You see, next, focus is on political analysis. Analysis with reference to the legal. Analysis with reference to music, mathematics, this. Everywhere the thinking is focused on the world. Right now, he's rational, he's thinking where the reference to the world. That needs to be channelized. What's the channelization? From the objects, it is brought to the process. From the process, it goes to the processor, to the thinker. Who is the thinker? What is the thinker? This is the nature of an intellectual person. Such an inquiry goes so deeper, so strong. How the process happens in him? He starts inquiring into the very basis on which he keeps claiming the world. Yeah, this is the world. Suddenly he turns back and asks, world is nothing but what? My perception. Right? How I perceive is what I call that as world. Whatever I call as world is what? What is it that I call as world? It is nothing but my perception. Imagine if I were to be an ant. How that ant will see the world. I'm sitting in a room now. This room is, good space. Just compact, sir. So people come here and they say, sir, just a compact room you have. Perfect, sir. For an ant, the same room is what? For an elephant, the room is what? No, can't even enter. Half the elephant will be outside the room. He cannot be inside. Elephant will say what? No, too small this is. Now, the room is what now? Is it compact? So luxurious? Or not enough? Which is correct? This is where he starts challenging the process, his conclusions. And he starts questioning the conclusions of his. That's called an intellectual person. Doesn't mean he will never conclude anything. No. He will process it, conclude, but he will never take that conclusion to be the final point. He will question that conclusion again. He questions the conclusion. So thus when he goes slowly, a point comes where he starts questioning, he starts suspecting the fundamental belief that he carries with reference to the world. What is a fundamental belief we carry with reference to the world? One thing we have taken with reference to the world is for granted. With reference to our life, for granted. What? This is real, isn't it? We just studied waking, dream, deep sleep. Now here, which is real for you? The waking is taken for granted as real. Absolutely real, of course. You see, I have a business. Such an important thing, The business problem finished. You can't sleep. You have to induce sleep. Now, people have to, to sleep you need to be, I say, to act you have to induce, correct. You have to be motivated to do this. Now we have gone so low that even to sleep you need to be induced. What is that, sir? Why that's this? Because we feel this is real. The tragedy or the comedy that you are experiencing right now in this, you take it as what? So real. Now, an intellectual person is not the one who immediately concludes, saying, yeah, Allah Maya, sir. Allah unreal. That is what? Imitation. You are keeping Majnu's, Laila's picture. For Shankara, it is Maya, not for you. Then what is the Jnana Yoga practice, sir? Jnana Yoga practice, he is not going to conclude and say that it is real, nor he can conclusively say it is unreal. So he goes what? Right through, he is constantly suspecting whether it is real or not. The constancy through to that suspicion. Our problem is someone has to remind you to suspect also. That's why we have these classes. Every week we have a class. Why we have a class? We need these books. We need these masters to come and remind us. Hey, this is real. Correct. But for an intellectual person, that suspicion, that's about it. He's not going to be concluding anything. Conclusion means that's not an intellectual. That intellectual type goes on suspecting. When he's suspecting the very reality of the world, of objects, beings, transactions, relationships, everything, how can he get involved there? How much value he will give for it, how much he will get attached to it, how is it possible for him to develop more desires there, more likes and dislikes and all that? All that will reduce. This is how intellectual person it works, he says. Second type. Right. In the last class, we just read through the whole thing. I didn't explain much. You see, today we thought we'll give a little explanation. Well, there are a lot of explanations there. Now we can go on discussing this nature, but little detail is needed for you to follow what he is saying. The second category, the intellectual one. Third category is active. Here, the personality is not dominated either by emotions or intellectual. Both are there. both are there. Most of us will fall into this category. Vast majority of human will fall into this category of, active, more or less equally developed. More or less equally developed means totally confused. We don't know. That's all. That means you are an active type. How do you identify? See, why we are studying all this is only for one reason, to identify where I belong to. Okay. So first to do, you read. Sir, I don't appear like that also. I don't look like this also. Then what I should be? A third category. What? Sometimes little emotion. Your emotions also not in the boiling point. It's just lukewarm. It's just a lukewarm emotions. That's why we keep, I ask people, when is the last time you laugh to an extent tears come? You have to search in your memory. When does it happen? You have to go to your school days. And it is so interesting. You see, these kids and all, when you see, amazing it is to see them. It is such a lame thing, but they laugh to such an extent. They roll on the floor. I've seen people actually doing it, You have to see, this is the tragedy. That's why, we say, be there with him, to point out. You have to show that person. Only then we can understand. Otherwise, it's very difficult to recognize, for us to know. They laugh to an extent. When does that happen? When is that you have done something with that peak? Anger gets picked up very easily for all of us. I'm not talking about that. Now, we are talking about the strength, not the weakness. Strength is the positive side. But laughter, the joy, the love that you can experience, that surrender that you get, that devotion that you can experience. When is the last time you had felt? Even if you go to Tirupati also, there also, what do you see there? Does tears roll down when you see that idol? That's something extraordinary has to happen for that. Even normal things, they get excited. That's called emotional type. Emotional type of a person is just a small thing you explain. You see, the moment something they understand, first thing they react to that understanding is crying or laughing. They just have to recognize something. They understand something. They see something. They meet somebody. You see, it's so fascinating to see. Emotional type. Intellectual type is the moment they give them something, they start probing into it. Let's say if you want to know you are an intellectual type or not, very easy. You go to the browser, web browser of that person. That's what they say. You want to know the character or the nature of a person, check into the history of web browser. Right? What they browse, you will know. How many of you sit and get excited about algebra, calculus? Have you ever browsed in YouTube? There are fascinating explanations are there for that. Integration, differentiation. 1.5 hours class is there, introduction. It's there in the system. So I'm not able to tell that thing. You just open that and sit through. That's all. You don't have to follow. Just listen to what that fellow has to say. TED Talks people listen to. You see that? And they think they are intellectual. You're not intellectual, please. TED Talks. Mathematics class are you able to listen to? That's called intellectual. If you want to know who is an intellectual person, this mathematics teachers, no. I'm talking about mathematics student. I'm not talking about mathematics teachers. Mathematics teacher is a mathematics teacher. Why? Because profession. It's a job. And there are students who study mathematics. Why they are studying mathematics? Because it is there in the compulsory. That's why the moment they come 11th, 12th, they are given option to choose mathematics or not. So many of them have chosen no mathematics. And invariably, I have seen, they come back after 15 years, alumni association. They come back and they say, we made a mistake. We should have studied mathematics. It's because of the professional necessity. If at all people are studying those things, algebra, logarithm, all these things they are doing because of the pressure of the necessity. Now, that's not the way. When you are given a choice, do you go towards that natural? That's called intellectual. You go to it. You study mathematics. Then there is no necessity for you to learn anything about it. You don't have to. You're not going to do any mathematics. There's no exams for you. There's nothing. But you sit and study. That's intellectual. It's thinking, rational type. Active person means he is a mixed one. Means he is lukewarm with reference to emotions. He is lukewarm with reference to thinking also. Little emotions, little thinking. Sometimes it appears he is slowly going. That's where you need to be very carefully studying here. Remember the points. Emotional, intellectual, active, indolent. Okay. There are 4 categories. And no human being is 100%. Okay? That's what he says. Suppose if he says, emotional person means you are totally emotional, there is no problem at all. Intellectual means you are totally intellectual, no problem at all. Mixed type, active means mixed type. Now the question we have is, think carefully. If a person is predominantly emotional, that means what? He is also intellectual. Predominantly intellectual means he is also emotional. Oh, what is the difference between predominantly emotional person, predominantly intellectual person, and a mixed? Anyway, he is also mixed, no? You're all with me? Question is difficult. It's like, Upanishads. Upanishadic tradition is, if you see the Bhashyam commentary, Bhashyam will be given, elaborate Bhashyam will be there for the question. Upanishadic students' question will be commented bigger. Commentary for that is bigger. Answer is not so big. Answer is a small one. This is what he's saying. Okay. Question is more difficult here. Understand the question. The emotional person also has. Then what is it? Are you going to talk in terms of proportion? Proportion, immediately you say what percentage? 51-49. Like companies, they have no share. 50% share if I have means we are a predominant. Now, what is the difference between this mixed personality? Why this mixed type of personality is given the path of action? Why he is given that? That's the most important thing to understand here. First, you need to know the difference between predominantly emotional, predominant nature of a personality, and mixed nature of a personality. That's what he says. Classified as active, possesses intellect more or less equally developed. He could be sometimes emotional, at times he has a mixed temperament. Now, what is the mixed? That mixture also same, no? So he is also mixed, emotional also mixed, intellectual also mixed. Then what is the difference? Now you can't quantify in life. You can't quantify things. In the share, you can quantify and say 45%, 55%, and all that. Now in life, how are you to quantify here? Then how can you understand the difference between predominant nature and a mixed nature? Because even emotional person sometimes becomes intellectual, no? That intellectual person also sometimes emotional. Then he says there are people who are mixed, which means what? Sometimes emotional, sometimes like. It's the same thing for emotional fellow also. It's the same thing for intellectual fellow also. This is how you should study. When you read these books, there's a way of reading. You see. Now we can't give immediately for every paragraph you give us, sir, what to focus. That depends on our mood. You see. But every day when you sit and read these books are not to be read. No. This needs to be stay. You have to stay with it, chew it. Yes. Predominant, mixed. That mixed type of personalities will gravitate naturally towards action. That's clue. The emotional gravitates towards emotion. The intellectual gravitates to thinking, automatic. Inquiry, investigation, analysis, whatever. Right? Intellectual. They naturally move in that direction. This mixed type of personalities, what happens to them, sir? Since they naturally take to action, they were given the path of action. And what is the path of action? Another clue. The path of action means the intellect pitches up a higher ideal, a goal, and the mind surrenders to it, where both are participating, engaged. The direction for him comes from action. Guidance is through action. Guidance for emotional is through emotion. Guidance for intellectual is through thinking, investigation, inquiry. Guidance for active is through action. What type of action contrasts that to our action? What is our type of action? And what is that type of action? There we understand what is how Karma Yoga helps the active type of people to evolve, meaning to drop their desires. evolution. Whenever we use the word evolution, you got to put it within brackets as dropping desires, reduction of desires. That's the meaning there. We'll see more in the next class. And day